Well, it's already February, and I bet you your meal rotation's already looking a lot like it did last year. So it's time to mix it up a little bit. Today I'm gonna bring you 3 beef recipes that are super tasty, affordable, and don't take that long to pull together. All within about 15 minutes each, not all together. But let's get stuck in. First up, beef chow mein. So the trick with any stir fry, especially a noodle one, is to make sure you've got everything ready. So we're gonna do beef strips today. We're gonna use an egg noodle, which we need to blanch first. So let's get some water on for that. Just bring that to the boil. We're gonna blanch these for 1 minute, then we're gonna cool them down and rinse them off before we fry them. Here I've got a sirloin that I've kind of broken down into strips, but feel free, you can just buy beef strips. You can even use beef mince for this. You can strip up rump, whatever you kind of want. Any kind of steak cut, minute steaks cut into strips work really well. So perfect time, while we're waiting for that to boil, we'll get everything else ready. We've got some green cabbage here. We're just gonna cut into nice big dices. We're gonna slice our onions, and we're gonna slice some red capsicum or red peppers wherever you are in the world. And we're gonna keep our spring onions nice and chunky, about 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch long. And that way they kind of keep their integrity when we're frying them. So we're just gonna blanch our noodles. Like I said, I've got some iced water here ready to go because they're only gonna take a minute. We wanna stop them from cooking. But what this does is just kind of helps them break up a bit. Into the boiling water and then just move them around, make sure they're all kind of individual noodles. And then like most stir fries, we're gonna do this in sections because we don't have the heat of a commercial wok fryer here. So we'll get all the veggies done first, and then we'll get our beef, and then we'll mix everything together. So drain my noodles really well of water. Just gonna drizzle them in a bit of oil. I like to use peanut oil for when I'm doing stir fries, it's a neutral flavor. And just toss them through, and that just stops them from sticking. So seasonings. Now this looks like a lot of stuff, but you've probably got most of this in your pantry already. So we've got some dark soy sauce here, light soy sauce, oyster sauce, Chow wine, and we've got a little bit of cornstarch, which will help us thicken it and have everything stick, all the sauces and stuff stick to the noodles. Also got a little bit of white sugar. You can kind of use any sugar you want, but white kind of works the best. So we've got everything assembled. It's time to cook our noodles. So like I said before, we're gonna cook the veggies separately, and then we'll cook the beef and the noodles. So you wok on high heat, get a decent amount of oil in there, and make sure you've got the oil spread all around that wok. Don't spill it like I just did though. And the reason you want it all the way up the side is because when you're gonna start tossing it, food might stick there otherwise. So once the oil starts just shimmering, you're gonna add your onions first. Using your wooden spoon or your wok spoon, just make sure you break them up. Capsicums next. Once you start seeing a little bit of color, you can add your cabbage. And when the cabbage just starts to wilt, spring onions. So I wouldn't stress too much if the stuff's not fully cooked. You just want the greens to wilt just slightly, and we're gonna take it out. Make sure you get all of them out. So now we're gonna start cooking our beef and then our noodles. We'll season that well, and then we can add our veg back in. While we're waiting for that oil to heat up, it's a great time to let you know that this video is actually sponsored by Australian Beef. So a huge thank you to them for sponsoring this video. So now our oil is nice and hot. In with the beef. Sorry, it might get a bit loud now. Just let that brown up a little bit. Add a little bit more oil on the outside if you need to, but don't try and move it too much. If you move it too much, you're gonna kind of just take the heat completely out of the wok. The other thing I like to do is to try and use the 2 wooden spoon method, which means you can kind of mix it like this, instead of lifting the wok off, taking it away from that heat source. So have 2 wooden spoons ready. Okay, we're gonna give it a little toss, and then we're gonna add our noodles and start tossing them. And it doesn't matter that this beef's not fully cooked yet, it will cook over the time. So in with our noodles. We've gotta keep these noodles moving, because you don't want them to stick. Start tossing your beef through your noodles, and then we're gonna start adding our seasonings. Break your noodles up a little bit, as in kind of pull them apart so they're not stick together, and you've got, you know, a nice mixture of meat in there. And if you see it starting to stick at the sides, you can add just a little bit more oil around the outside. So first up, Chow wine, dark soya, light soya, and our oyster sauce. Always add your sauces to the edge of the wok. That way, some of the stuff is a little bit acidic and alcoholic. The heat will burn that off pretty quickly. Toss this well. Now we're gonna add our veg back in. A little bit of sugar to balance out those flavors. And I just got a little bit of water into this corn flour that we'll mix through. Not quite yet, but we'll have it ready. So we'll continue to toss to make sure that we get some good mixation. Mixation, is that a word, Mitchell? This is where this 2-spoon approach, I think, is really helpful, trying to kind of get good coverage. And so what you're looking for is really even coverage of that sauce. So you see it's like a bit of a lighter section. It means you got to continue to keep tossing, keep working. Just going to add our little corn slurry here, just to make sure all that delicious sauce sticks to the food and not the bottom of the wok. And we're pretty much done. Let's serve a portion up. So really a quick one to pull together. Now, my hot tip, if you are doing like we often do and cooking extra for leftovers for the next day, give to the kids to take to school or taking to work, serve up what you need to serve up and then cool the rest down really quickly, and you're gonna find it's just gonna hold a lot better overnight if the faster you cool it down. So dish everyone's dinner up and then put the whole lot on a big tray and cool it down really quickly, or put it into containers that you're serving it or that you're giving it to people in. So there you go, beef chow mein, super delicious, easy to pull together, and a great weeknight meal to put into your new rotation. But next up, it's one of my favorite dishes of all time, san choy bao. Let's get into it. I first started making this dish in London, of all places, a long time ago, and my first ever head chef job at a place called the Great Eastern Dining Room in Shoreditch, and I've loved it ever since. It's pretty simple. We use beef mince, depending on how you're feeling in life. You can use what we call it CC in the industry, it's so fancy, but just fat to lean ratio. You can use whatever fat to lean ratio you want. I'm using 90-10 at the moment. I really should be using 80-20 like you would in a burger, you get more flavor. Anyway, dried shiitake mushrooms, you can get fresh ones, you can use those. I like dried, then we're just gonna pour some hot water over those to rehydrate them. This is a great one to sneak mushrooms into people's diet who don't like mushrooms, because we're gonna dice them up really small and they're never gonna know they're there, and they're delicious. It's like a really nice umami flavor. And water chestnuts, these come canned, they're in most supermarkets now. You just drain them off and we dice them. If you can't find them, which I'm pretty sure most people can get hands on water chestnuts now, then just leave them out, or you can put, I don't know, give me a second. You can just leave them out, doesn't really matter, but they do add a really good textural component. They're kind of quite, they've got like the texture of like an apple, like the center of like a really nice firm apple. You know, quite a mild flavor, but they add a really nice textural element, so I do suggest trying to get your hands on it. So first up, let's get those chestnuts diced. So we're gonna crush some garlic, 4 cloves. Spring onions, we're just gonna slice these, not super fine, you want a little bit of texture there. And the reason why we cut things so small in this dish, and it might seem a little bit tedious, but I promise you the rest of this dish is really quick to pull together, is because when we serve this, we're gonna serve this on a lettuce cup. So you want about a spoon, you know, 1 spoonful of stuff and get a little bit of everything before you put it onto your lettuce cup. So these spring onions I'm slicing about 1/2 centimeter thick. And when you get to the greener part, like that, we'll keep that. We're gonna cook that with the beef. I like to cut this stuff a bit finer, and then we'll use this to garnish it. Just push it nice and flat. Turn your knife to an angle and cut it kind of as fine as you can. All right, just gonna cut these shiitakes and we are ready to start cooking. And then keep that juice that came off the shiitakes. If we do need a little bit of moisture, it's a great little mushroom stock to use. To the wok, heat on. While that wok's heating up, sauces are real simple, very similar to the last time. Dark soya, light soya, oyster sauce, and black pepper, a lot of it too. Nice and coarse. I'm actually gonna adjust that setting now, which I do on the bottom, not there. I want it nice and coarse. Wok's on high, oil in the pan. That was weird. And we're gonna go straight in with our beef and break it up a little bit. Top of that, we're gonna add our garlic and the white end of our spring onion. Don't be tempted, don't move it just yet. Just a little bit of salt, not too much, a lot of soy sauce going in there, and a little bit of white pepper. Really trying to up that pepper flavor. So this has been frying like that for a good minute now. We can start to toss. And that there is what you're looking for. Starting point of the Maillard reaction. We want some color on this beef. So just toss it so those onions and garlic are well distributed, and then we'll leave it again for another minute. While that's doing its thing, we can add our mushroom, our shiitake, and our water chestnuts. Beef's looking good. Now we haven't dropped heaps of moisture, which is exactly what we want. See, when you're pulling the beef back, if you start doing that and it's dropping heaps of liquid, it's not a great sign. It's not the end of the world, but it means you're kind of frying this beef nicely as opposed to boiling it. Time to start adding our sauces, but first we're gonna get our pepper in. And you want a lot, you know, like a good 2 tablespoons. If you're serving this to your kids and they're not super strong on, or super keen on like lots of pepper, you can kind of tone it back a bit and then maybe do yours to order, but you kind of want to have the pepper in there while it's cooking to toast it out a bit. So toss all that nice pepper through, stunning. Sauces in, just like before, around the outside, around the outside, around the outside. Well, smells good, doesn't it, Mitchell?
Hanging for breakfast. I mean lunch.
Okay, this is looking pretty good. I do want it a little bit saucier, so I am gonna add a little bit of that mushroom stock. And just like before, we're gonna add a teaspoon of corn flour, dissolved in some water. Just to thicken that sauce a bit, gets it nice and shiny as well. That's it, we're done. Let's have a taste, make sure it's seasoned all right. Yum. Takes me back. I love the textures. The water chestnuts, they make it. So to serve, you just need, I like using baby gem. You can also use iceberg lettuce, just cut into quarters and broken apart. Baby gem I find a bit easier. So just wash your leaves, cut the bottoms off, and then you've got a perfect little serving vessel. Get some of your san choy bao on there. Garnish with your greens. And then put some of your leaves around the plate. Stunning. Now, if you need some carbs as well, I'd be serving this with some rice. Just shove some rice in your rice cooker and serve on the side. But for me, this is a great option if you're looking for a low carb option. It heats up really well the next day. Cool that down. Obviously don't make your lettuce cups, kind of send that lettuce separately. But you know, cool that down, heat it up the next day, back in some fresh lettuce cups. There you go. Super tasty little dish and really, really quick to pull together. San choy bao, one of my absolute favorites. All right, next up, we're gonna make beef burritos and we're gonna serve them 2 different ways. So the first way we're gonna serve them is for dinner tonight. We're gonna cover them in a sauce. This is called serving it wet. So we're gonna make a real quick little hot salsa. And then the other way is we're gonna cool them down, wrap them up, and they're perfect for lunch the next day. Now, I'll be perfectly honest. I know this video is titled 15-minute meals. This one's a little bit of a stretch in 15 minutes, but I reckon we can get pretty close, and we're gonna have a few things going on at one time. So first things first, make sure your oven is on and set to grill. Next, we're gonna need to make the beans. So I've got some canned black beans we're gonna turn into refried beans, and we're gonna make the little tomato sauce. Those 2 things are gonna take the longest time to cook. We're gonna get those going first. We need onions for both of those recipes. So we're gonna dice these onions. All right, while I'm here, I'm also just gonna run my knife through these garlic cloves. So that was 3 red onions that I've diced up there, because we're gonna use it in the beans, we're gonna use it in the tomato sauce, and we're also gonna use some of the onion in a little Pico de Gallo that's gonna go into the burritos as well. So we're gonna get 2 fry pans on the go. Drizzle of olive oil. Roughly 1 diced onion in each. And in the pan you're doing your tomato sauce, your garlic as well. Pinch of salt. Okay, the sauce that you're gonna do, the tomato sauce, if your kids or you or whoever doesn't like chili, this is where you leave that out. So a few chili flakes in there, smoked paprika, ground coriander, and then we're gonna put cumin in both. Toast that, just get those flavors to open up a little bit, you know? That's what all those cool TV chefs say, isn't it? You're not cool and you're not a TV chef, Andrew. All right, I've got a can of crushed tomatoes. In they go. They're actually whole. I crushed them by my hand because I didn't actually buy any crushed ones. Now we're just trying to cook these tomatoes out now. Then we'll check for seasonings. You can blitz this as well, but I kind of like to keep it a bit chunky. But you do want it relatively thick. So we've got 2 tins of black beans that I've drained. In they go there. We just basically need to heat these through before we mash them. So you don't want this like a puree. Well, I don't like it like a puree anyway. I kind of like it with a little bit of texture. Okay, cool. Tomato sauce is just simmering nicely. Those are just coming up to temperature. We're gonna jump back over here. I'm gonna get beef marinated before we cook it in our cast iron. So we're gonna make carne asada, effectively. In Mexico, that's normally made with beef, which is beef. Of course it's made with beef. It's usually made with flank steak or skirt steak, which are all delicious cuts of beef. I absolutely love them. They can be trickier to find sometimes though, for whatever reason. I don't know why. Butchers, please start stocking that stuff because it's a delicious cut of meat and we should all be eating more of it. A great alternative is rump instead. Now the trick is with rump is that it's very lean, so you don't want to overcook it. So what we do is I've had a big piece of rump there. You can just buy the strips, get your butcher to strip it, whatever. If you've got a big lump like that, cut it with the grain until you get these like longer strips. So the grain's running this way, and then we're going to cut against the grain. And that way, we got these strips of beef like that with very small, pieces that you could literally just pull apart while it's raw. And when you're biting into your burrito, you're not kind of pulling out a whole slice of meat, which is also another great reason why rump works, because it hasn't got any kind of intermuscle or sinew and stuff inside, and a lot of the big muscles that are there. So either get your butcher to strip it, whatever, slice it nice and thin so you got small pieces against the grain, and then we're gonna marinate it. This is another thing you could do, marinate it 12 hours ahead, 24 hours ahead, the longer the better really. So to marinate, we're gonna keep real simple olive oil, just to keep it nice and it helps the marinade stick. Smoked paprika, ground coriander, ground cumin, and some chili. Leave it out if you don't like it spicy. Toss that really well so everything's nicely coated. Oh, we also need some salt in there. That was silly, Andrew. We've got beefy fingers. Clean hands, get some salt in there, and then we'll give it a mix. All right, we're gonna get our cast iron nice and hot. We'll have a look at our sauces. Tomato is good. That's the consistency we're looking for. You know, it's pretty thick. When you pull your spoon through it, it stays apart. That makes sense. It doesn't kind of leak out. So I've turned that right down low. We still want a bit of heat in that when we pour it over our burritos. And our beans are looking good too. They're starting to break down. We'll deal with those in a second. So right now, we're gonna try and cook all this beef. Once it comes out of the pan, we've got a bit of time to work and stuff. So we can mash that in the meantime. Then all we need to do is make a Pico de Gallo really quickly and assemble. Simple as that. Get that nice and hot. While we're waiting for that cast iron to heat, we can mash our beans a bit. Like I was saying before, don't go too crazy. Kind of want a bit of texture in there. Okay, I'm gonna turn the heat off those all together. That's what we're looking for. Nice. If you need to, you can add a little bit of water if it's getting a bit stiff, which we probably will here. Just makes it a bit easier to spread. Just a little bit, 1/4 cup. Nice. Pan should be hot. A little bit more oil in our pan. Now don't be tempted just to throw a whole bunch of this into your cast iron. All you're gonna do is take the temperature right out of the pan and everything's just gonna boil. So you can start seeing little whispers of smoke. That's what we're looking for. It won't take long. See those first bits that I put in? They're already ready to be flipped. And they're done. The only thing left, make a little quick Pico de Gallo, which is pretty simple. Have a bowl, some leftover onions from before, dice some tomatoes. I like to just leave my seeds in. I don't think everyone does, but I do. But make sure you take that little cory bit out. No one likes to eat that. Now it's got some coriander. I go really heavy on coriander for this recipe. I think it balances out really well. And cut through the stems, get a few of those in there too. Bonk. A lot of people's worst nightmare right there. And then the zest and juice of 2 limes. I don't know if the zest is commonly done in Mexico, but I would love lime zest. Give that a stir, and then we'll start assembling. Ooh, almost forgot. Pinch of salt in there too. So we're gonna do a little assembly line. I just like toasting my tortillas on an open flame. And then we'll lay them out on the assembly line, the burrito assembly line. Time to start building. I like to start with the beans. So let's just get some on each first, and then we can spread. All right, the star of our show. Let's get this beef on. All right, sprinkle of cheese left. We're gonna need a little bit for the top of the ones that we're gonna have tonight as well. Nice fresh Pico de Gallo. A little bit of lettuce for crunch. We're gonna keep 6 for tomorrow. And we're going to do 9 wet for tonight. So we've got an oven safe tray, obviously. We're just gonna wrap these first 9 up, nice and tight. And then into the tray, seam side down. We've got some nice pieces of foil here to wrap these ones up. Before we do that, let's get these in the oven so we can eat them because I'm hungry. The sauce that we made earlier, it's also a great dipping sauce. So if you want to save some to give to whoever's taking the wrap ones tomorrow, you can save a little bit for that as well. Effectively just get sauce all over these things. Nice little sprinkle of cheese. And in the oven on grill. Just wrap these ones up for tomorrow lunch and then get them in the fridge. Just like before, keep them nice and tight. Whoa, how good do they look? So there you go, in 15-ish minutes, some delicious beef burritos served wet and a bunch of lunch for the next day. This is an absolute favorite for me, especially if you have someone that you need to pack a lunch for. These things travel really, really well. I'll eat them cold, no problem at all. We can heat them up. Obviously, you need to take them out of the foil if you're gonna need a microwave. Ideally, in like a sandwich press, a toaster press at the office or at school or wherever. I don't know what schools have these days. Or in your travel buddy in the back of your work ute, wherever you're going, they travel incredibly well. And this just looks like heaven. Anyway, thank you legends so much for watching. Like this video if you took anything from it, subscribe if you're not, and a huge thank you once again to Australian Beef for sponsoring this video. We'll see you all next week for another recipe. but I'm about to eat one of these.